we can get together and do that. Okay, well, good to see Ed Jones and to see Ed Joseph. How are you, Ed? And Ed?
Very well, thank you. Namaste. Good evening to all.
Very good. Jones, how are you?
I'm hanging. I'm doing all right. Thank you very much.
Well, good. Okay.
Thanks for the note, Ed.
Beg pardon?
Ed sent me a note after the last practice telling me I was missed.
Oh, okay.
Whether he was sincere or not, I appreciate it.
I was sincere.
Oh, Lance, you mentioned during when I was looking at it on the, I know you don't have much time for this now, but when I was looking at it on YouTube, you mentioned that you had really taken up seriously incorporating the Tao into your practice.
I've been studying the Tao, yes.
Yeah. Now, I got the impression that there are kind of different versions of it. I have the Tao, at least the one that I ordered and bought, but you seem to be talking about, are there different versions of it that interpret it a little bit more? Is that what you were saying?
Well, there's different translations, yes.
That's what you were saying, okay.
Yeah, different translations. And then the one that I'm working on now is by a fellow named Solala Toller. And he's written a book and he's done a translation called Practicing the Tao Te Ching. And it's very contemporary, you know, in terms of the language that he uses in the translation is very good. And then he gives a commentary on it, and then he gives a practice. And it's been really great. And it's very in its core, the meditation is exactly the meditations that we do ourselves, you know, in Buddhism. And so it's very interesting to see where the Buddhism and the Tao Te Ching, you know, kind of layer on top of each other. And then also to consider the Hinduism where it layers with that and everything. So it's very interesting. I'm enjoying it very much.
A very subtle meaning in the Tao, and I don't pretend to understand it all, but I feel like I do. When I first started reading it, the words just seemed to stop and leave me with some sort of energy or thought. But I find that reading it 15 to 20 every night just puts me completely at rest, which is good. So I make it a habit of looking at some of it every night and just considering it and trying to meditate.
Well, that's great. I think sometime in the future, I want to finish this book and have a handle on where I want to go with it. But then I would love to have a class with that, you know, share it with people.
That'd be great.
It's really good. And it doesn't take the place of Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't take the place of it, but they dovetail in a way, you know, and it's very interesting to see how that works and so on. Okay, well, let's get started for this evening. And so we'll do opening prayers. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to do opening prayers. Keep it simple. I'm going to read through the first group of prayers, and then we'll recite the short refuge prayer and the four immeasurables 3 times. So if you have your prayer book, we can use that. And then we're going to go to a new section that we haven't explored in quite a while from our 101 book. So if you've got your 101 book, that'll be good. If you don't have it, not to worry. We'll be talking about it and keeping it simple, and then opening up for discussion, because everybody really seems to be enjoying the discussions that we're having. So we'll just kind of set the stage, posit a couple questions, and then discuss what our feelings about those things are. Okay, so we begin with the altruistic motivation. Just once in English. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. The action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. The long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Then taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. The short refuge prayer, twice in English, once in Tibet. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chonam la, shangju badu dagni kapsuchi, dagi jin soki pe sonam gi, jola penshir sangye ju pasho. The four immeasurables. May all mothers, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mothers, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sam chen tam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dampar chorchi. Dug now dang now gi gu dang dwell war jorchi. Dug now me pe de wa dang mi dwell war jorchi. Ne ring shag dang ni dang dwell way tang nam la ne pa jorchi. Okay, thank you. Anybody has any questions about the opening prayers or about anything that we talked about in past weeks? Now's a good time to bring it up. Okay. So what I thought would be a good idea, we've been talking an awful lot about developing a practice and so on. We've been talking about a lot about bodhicitta, aspiring to cultivate bodhicitta, a holy enlightened mind. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity are the four vast immeasurable qualities of the holy enlightened mind of bodhicitta. So we've been talking a lot about that. So now the next thing to talk about would be putting that bodhicitta to action. What does that mean? How do we do that? So if you look on our outline book, we're looking at page 25, and the outline book is based on chapters 11 through 17 in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. So you can go into as much detail as you like, following the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. And but here in the outline, we'll keep it simple so we can have a discussion. So this is the method. So it says the antidote to not knowing the method to practice for achieving Buddhahood. So the question is, okay, we want to attain Buddhahood. How do we do that? And what is the method? So here we're talking about the method, the training and action bodhicitta. This is the method to attain Buddhahood, for action bodhicitta, putting that to use. So, and the second prayer that we recited tonight was the action bodhicitta prayer that's on page 4 in our prayer book. So that's action bodhicitta in a very simple sense, where we're saying that no matter what we do with our body, speech, and mind, we are going to do this for the benefit of all other beings. So it says here in this outline, it says, training and action bodhicitta. Once a bodhisattva, a holy enlightened being, someone who is on the path to cultivate bodhicitta, once a bodhisattva has cultivated aspiration bodhicitta. So the aspiration would be the academics, or being able to identify the goals that we have to be a bodhisattva, to be a holy being, to be a holy enlightened being, and what the obstacles are, and then what the methods are to overcome those obstacles and so on. So now, assuming that we've been successful in some understanding of that, now we need to put that into action. So it says, once a bodhisattva has cultivated aspiration bodhicitta, he has to exert himself to perfect the mind in order to actualize the precious altruistic thought and to use it for a sentient being's welfare. So we need to use that to develop our mind, to develop our thoughts, that we're doing this for the benefit of other beings, for their welfare. It says all study and practice, even sitting for one moment, doing one prostration, or reciting one mantra becomes method to further this mind. So no matter what we do, if it's for the benefit of others, then there is a good thing, a good result. This is working to actualize bodhicitta, if our intention is to be helping other beings. So just to say, there's 3 types of Dharma teachings that we learn about in the Dharma. And so the first is called the Vinaya teachings. The second is called the Sutra teachings. And the third is called the Abhidharma teachings. So in the Vinaya teachings, we're concerned with the moral ethics. We're concerned with the discipline. And we have a set of precepts to clearly define what this morality is. So that's the beginning stage. That's the fundamental stage called the Vinaya stage. Then the next stage is called the Sutra stage. And these are concerned with how to calm abide and other methods of meditative concentration. So what we're doing is we have a system by which we are learning how to calm our physical body, how to calm our intellectual mind, and use that energy to be able to cross over into our spirituality, into our spiritual body, into our spiritual mind. So these are the sutra teachings, and the sutra teachings are the literal words of the Buddha, the historical Buddha, as well as a few of the other masters who came after the Buddha that spoke or clarified certain things that might have been a little vague, but they became part of the canon of the sutra teachings. So these are the literal words of the Buddha. Then the next is the Abhidharma, and the Abhidharma means the emphasizes interdependent origination, wisdom awareness, or insight. So this is talking about the wisdom of bodhicitta, the wisdom of the holy enlightened mind, the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of the bodhisattva. So being able to take the discipline, to be able to use the sutra teaching, saying, well, this is how we train our mind. This is how we begin to do our meditations and so on. And then in the Abhidharma, now we're seeing this assembly of wisdom of how to process this and how to use this and so on. So one example here might be that in the Vinaya, it's like going into a hospital if you were sick. And then once you go into the hospital, you meet up with the nurses who are making you comfortable. That would be the sutra. And then the doctor comes in and examines you and recommends, prescribes certain medicine for you. That would be the Abhidharma. That would be the wisdom to cure your illnesses and so on. So this sets up a conversation that we begin with tonight about action bodhicitta. So what do you think about this? I know it's an open question, so I'm going to ask Michael, I'm going to ask Tom, because you guys have had the most experience with this, directly with these teachings and so on. But I'd like everybody to comment on this. How does this, what do you think of this? And what have you been exposed to in your life from either the Buddhist tradition or any other tradition that speaks to having this kind of a structure, this kind of a system to be able to say, okay, I've got this great mind of righteousness, if you will. How do I actualize that? How am I taught to actualize it? How have I been successful in this? Or maybe I wasn't successful. What do I need to do with this? So, Michael, would you speak to this, please?
What's your question, Lance? Speak to what in particular?
Just generally to speak to the idea of applying a system to your life, action bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind.
Well, human behavior, I think, when it's designed for good outcomes, when it's designed with virtue in mind and and altruism as a value, it can't be sloppy. I mean, it can be kind of sloppy, but then the path gets all muddy, and the the goals don't stay clear. It's just like human life when we're not attentive. When we when we don't pay much attention to where we're going, we tend to change where we're going based on where we go, based on where we are, and on what new things are going on, and what new shiny stuff is by the side of the road, or where where we where we're tempted to go get something nice to eat on a side road, or try a new experience, or go to a carnival, or I mean, this is just an analogy of walking down a path. But if we living a good life is serious shit. And so if I don't keep an image or a snapshot in mind of what my personal goals are, what I see that I want to end up doing and end up being thought about when I'm dead, then there's no time to meander, especially when you're old. I mean, even when you're young, there's really no time, because life is just flowing like a waterfall. Before you know it, you turn around and there's less and less opportunity to make a difference. So one has to have a plan, and the plan doesn't have to be a strategy, but if there's a structure that's already built for us, that is sort of a blueprint for success, and it comes from a credible source, then that seems to me, or it has seemed to me, to be the most expeditious way to approach reaching towards my vision of what I'd like to, what life should be for me as I taper off, and this kind of structure is perfectly sensible. It's a balanced taxonomy. There are the dimensions that are addressed are sensible. It's you can imagine the layers and the levels. You can imagine the depth and the shallow. You can imagine the tension and the looseness. It's very accessible if you allow the system to settle. And I think I've had to do that over 40 years. I've had to sort of accept the idea that I don't know everything, and that deep inside that there's a Buddha nature, and the Buddha knows everything. And if I allow myself to stay straight and to live with and live systematically, live on a sort of a step-by-step path, and keep my eye on the prize, I think I've had better days. Each day becomes better, and the moments seem to be connected with each other. I spent a lot of time as a young person with the moments not being connected, because I wasn't mindful enough to watch where my thoughts were running and where my behavior was taking me. It was just reactive and jumping from one shiny thing to the next emotional thing to the next sexy thing. And I think when I got to a certain level of maturity as a Buddhist and as a human, I began to see value in the patterns that have been charted out for us, a pattern that can be replicated, a pattern that comes not from factory workers or from bosses or from teachers, but a pattern that seems to come from the universe. And the more I see the universe as my pattern for life, and the universe as the pattern that I'm developed under, then I get to accept that I'm an iteration of the universe on a much smaller level. But that makes sense to me because the universe is just fine the way it is. And then that lets me believe with all my heart that everything is fine just the way it is. And there's joy in that, and simplicity, and tenderness at the same time, and room for error, and risk, and excitement, and spiciness.
Very good. Thank you. There's a lot there, so I think, we'll circle back and be able to unpack some of that. But first I'd like to get, Tom, would you add some comments? What do you think about this question about action bodhicitta, putting the system to work? What have you done? What would you like to do, etc.?
That's a big order to follow. I mean, Michael really, he said a lot, and really he covered a lot of bases there. I mean, that's like, Michael's a neurosurgeon. I'm just a general practitioner. I'm just.
Stop that, Tom. I want to be like you when I grow up.
I was like, that's a lot. I mean, Michael really. I mean, because Michael's very. He can express himself a lot better than I can. And Michael, I mean, and he does. He's very eloquent with words, and he really says what he means, and you can feel it. I mean, Michael's he's a very deep practitioner. You can tell. And every time he speaks, I learn quite a bit. And
the question was posed to you, not around me.
So instead of going here, I tend to look here. And I try to lead by example, and I can be a schmuck sometimes and do some dumb things. And I started a family very young, so I had very young kids at a very young age. So, I really had to set a good example in that form. So, I mean, I did that by taking them, my kids to temple, every Sunday, and doing things, and doing meditation, prostrations, and and then the years going by, I really appreciated the Vinaya, because that lays a really solid foundation for your practice, the very solid discipline that you need, because it's easy to fall off your practice and go off different paths, and down different alleys that you shouldn't. And I mean, trying to help others, it's like you have to first know yourself before you can help anybody else. It's a wonderful aspiration to wanting to help, to help others realize their true nature, but you have to really start doing some of that work yourself and really knowing yourself before really can, and really helping others realize their nature. Like Michael said, it can be really sloppy, if you don't know what you're doing, you can lead others down a really sloppy, messy path. So I tend to be a little cautious, telling, but like I said, I mean, I was brought up in the tradition where they'll go right upside your head, saying, "What are you doing? You're not doing it right." It was quick, and that's the type of discipline I needed. I know that, but I when I see somebody that really sincere about wanting to practice, or really showing interest that they want to learn, it inspires me to help them, to want to help them. you know, the little tiny bit of knowledge that I have, and literally it is a tiny bit, I mean, the thimble, I try to, you know, inspire them, you know. And so I try to do, you know, like I said, lead by example, you know, the little things that I do, you know, the little nuances I do, and just trying to be a decent human being, you know, day in and day out, day in and day out. And like I said, you know, after my practice, the last thing I say, you know, before I get off the cushion is just today, just today, let me be a decent human being, you know, because I don't know what I'm going to be tomorrow. I don't even know if I'm going to be around tomorrow. Just for today, let me just be a decent human being and see who I can help, you know. It's, you know, it's a very simple practice, you know, it can get very elaborate, get very deep, but, you know, we have our daily lives, and we try to live it the best we can. And, you know, we try to do it with as much ethics and morals, and just, you know, be a good person, you know, just be generous with your time. If you have the resources, be generous with your resources, be patient. And, you know, living around this area, you can practice all of those things on a daily basis, just driving around, you know, but, you know, it takes work, it takes a lot of effort, you know, so, you know, just don't be discouraged, just, you know, just keep at it, you know, keep at it. And one day, you know, we will discover our true nature, and that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So yeah, that's my little spiel.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Glad to go to Gary, and then Ed Jones, and then have Ed Joseph follow up with things. So everybody gets a chance to speak on this. So, and then so Gary, what do you think about this question about having a blueprint, a structure, a system to be able to guide your action bodhicitta?
Well, in the hierarchy that Tom described, wherein Michael is the specialist and he is a general practitioner, I think I'm the patient. I have taken the structure of Buddhist teaching as I received it over the past couple of years, and distilled it down into a guide to governing the behavior that I think most people, including myself, have been taught to engage in dealing with things that happen around us, whether they're grand events or the behaviors of individuals, things that happen to us, or things that we see happen to others, or broadly in the world. And the guidance in Buddhism always teaches me, I believe, to avoid internalizing everything that happens around me. And some things that we see happen are very awful, whether they are distant or in our immediate world. And it has taught me that I need to care, but I don't need to solve every problem. And nor do I need to necessarily pronounce myself on most problems. I do need to have a feeling about what is bodhicitta, what is right, what is the right governance of ourselves as individuals and groups and societies, and to respond with empathy and care to some of the disruptive things that we see in our immediate life and in the world writ large. But not to take it upon myself to put my fist into every problem that I can do more about even the greater things that are happening in the world that are challenging the world so much and they're causing so much suffering, which is so hard to see, by working on my own conduct and my own mindfulness, by meditating on it. There are, of course, times to intervene. When you see in your immediate vicinity harm about to come to someone, and you may at your own personal risk intervene as gently as possible. But in most cases, that's not what is available to you. What is available to you is to learn from what you see and learn how you can change yourself and find your own quietness and your own emptiness and your own steadiness and the frenzy of the world around you. I don't know how much sense that makes, and I don't want to take up too much time with that, but that's, you know, what can I learn from what I see, and what can I learn from my reaction to it, which is usually a product of the reaction I've had all these years, which is based on what society and my own family has taught me to do, which is not always the healthiest thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very good. That gave me a few points to write down and to follow up on. Some interesting ideas there. Jones, how about you? With your background, you know, both in family life and religious life and professional, you know, scholastic life, and being a, you know, a teacher, a professor, and so on. You know, how have you, you know, practically put actualization of the principles of bodhicitta, of doing for others? How have you put that to use, or what would you like to have done better, or how do you think about that?
I am, I mean, that's a huge bite. I mean, that's, I don't know how I can relate to all of that. These three guys that spoke before me, I mean, have just underscored what a novice I am on this whole process. I think about what somehow takes me to a Peanuts cartoon where Lucy and Linus and Charlie Brown are lying on the beach, and Lucy says, well, let's play what do you see in the clouds? And she says, I see the Mona Lisa. And over here, this configuration reminds me of the work of the sculptor Thomas Eakins or something. What do you see, Linus? And Linus says, well, I see Stephen being stoned, and I see something else. And okay, what do you see, Charlie Brown? He says, I was going to say that I saw a ducky and a horsey, but I've changed my mind. I think the these three types of Dharma teachings, and somewhere in my academic life, I mean, I ran across a distinction that I've always found meaningful, and a distinction between received knowledge and constructed knowledge. Received knowledge being something that another person or a book, knowledge that somebody else has, that then is transferred to you. And then you have it, having acquired it, you know, from somebody else or from some other source. And constructed knowledge being knowledge that you that's much more personal and much more much less explicit. I mean, knowledge that you construct based on somewhat on what you've been taught, but also on your experience in the world, and it's personal to you, and it may not be the same as somebody else's. Well, if we look at these three types of Dharma teachings, it seems to me the first, concentrating on moral ethics and so on, I mean, that's more in the explicit realm. I mean, that's more in a received knowledge realm. But the other two, I'm concerned with methods of meditative concentration and emphasis on independent origination. I mean, those are more from the inside out. So when you take the three together, it seems to me, I don't know enough. I mean, this is a combination of what in this classification system that I referred to is combination of received and constructed knowledge. But then when you say, when Michael said, asked you to refine the question that you were presenting to him, and you spoke about action bodhicitta as applying a system to your life. I don't see where the system is. To me, what the three guys before me have described is more of a philosophy than a system. I don't see, now maybe this is just terminology, but I'm missing the system. I mean, what Tom talked about in particular is aspiration to be a good person. I mean, to keep at it, to keep doing it, to not get discouraged. I don't see that as a system, or I don't understand it as a system. I understand it as an aspiration, governed by a philosophy. Now, what difference all that makes, I don't know, but that's just what went through my head.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And that, I got several notes on that. So that's very good. Thank you. So Ed Joseph, could you comment on your experience, maybe, before you, became a very spiritual being, and since being a spiritual being, how that has changed you, how you look at that, and to answer, or to examine Ed's question, do you have a sense of some kind of a system, or is there no system required?
A system is required. Even the Buddha touched upon, you gotta have a book. Okay, you gotta have a book, and the book provides some experiential analysis as to how to apply the wisdom from the book, right? So based on experiences. So yes, the system, whether it's from the West, whether it's from the East, Taoism, that's a system, the Catholicism, Christianity as a religion, all these things are, even ethics, philosophy, from a theoretical standpoint, then you live it, then that in itself becomes a system to aspire to become something better than you currently than the person currently is. So for me, even beyond my encounter, what I'm seeking is the refinement of it. Just whenever I thought I I knew, it's like I don't know anything. And yet I'm exposed to, I'm a young man, 47 years old, and yet my experience for some of those things that I've been exposed to, whether it's the nature of voodoo from Africa into Haiti, from which is voodoo it's worshiping nature. That's the true essence of it's not a religion, it's just being and doing with what is around you, right? So it's not a philosophy, that's a system, that's a naturalistic system in being, in living, voodoo. Or we can call it Wicca for the Westerners. Now, being from my experience as an engineer, a business person, from studying, then I pick up different system from, like I said, I went to seminary school for a while, and then because I was looking for something more from a system, but it turned out that what I was looking for, I already had. I just did not know how to use it. You see, I was looking for a system from where I could be programmed from, right? For example, the Bible, that's a collective system of, it's a philosophy, but people, you can actually live by it, right? From when you take it literally, like from a fundamental standpoint, you can actually live by it, and most people don't. Even the most fundamental people do not live in accordance to the Bible per se. And then beyond the literalism of the Bible, if I begin to say, there's something more, what is that something more? And that's where you have the mysticism comes in. And through that, that's when I had my experience. We call it a mystical experience. And then so from that experience, when I took that experience from because I call myself a mystic, from the standpoint of Christianity, but at the same time too, that I'm aware of Kabbalah, right? From Judaism, right? It turns out that they're parallel. It's almost like they're doing exactly the same thing. And when I take those two, the being a mystic and practicing Kabbalah, and then you mix that with the Haitian culture of voodoo. Voodoo is very demonstrative in that it's they takes different things and mix it together to heal people, like shamanism, that type of thing. And at the same time, there's another aspect of it that is black magic, right? So when I take everything, yes, that a blueprint is necessary so that at least one knows how to travel. And when I look at those three religion, if you will, that I'm exposed to, and in essence, they sing the same thing, is be aware of the desire, be aware of the aversions, and be aware of ignorance. So for me, specifically, I studied electrical, computer science, business, finance, administration, psychology, applied behavioral psychology. And it's like the more that I studied, the more I don't know. And yet, once I became exposed to what is the truth, to asking myself, what is the truth? In its simplicity is the desire, avoidance, and those things that you don't know. And so from where I am now is that I think, Lance, I sent you an email last Monday, marked 8 years. April 4th marked 8 years last Monday that I had the encounter with the infinite. So that's what I was, to honor that day. I just spent the whole day just alone, just in reverence of that mystery that I discover, that I encounter. So blueprint is necessary, and being aware that we don't know. And it opens a vista, a prism to continually and continuously seeking for the truth. And that happens to refinement, right? So each day I do, right? I engage in certain behaviors to make myself better. And I'll make it very brief. When you begin to actualize is to be able to put yourself, is to be able to feel another person, to be empathetic, understanding. Empathetic is like listening. Understanding is to know where that person is in order to meet that person where that person is, irrespective of intellectual knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Where so you could have a person that we will classify as that person like a lowly person, an uneducated person, if you will. And yet you still could be demonstrative of dignifying the humanity in that person and meet that person where he or she is. And in so doing, there's a validation in yourself that you still have yet to refine and develop yourself. I don't know if I answered the question. I think I tried to, because I know I said a lot. So.
Well, it's very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was very good. And I think that everybody, contributed a point of view to the question and so on. And I think, the question of a system, having a system, was at the core of this, because that's what we're really trying to get to here, is what system is there that we can use to be able to understand where we are, who we are, where we want to be, how we want to help others, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to have some kind of a framework, and to what degree does it get defined? Is it very loosey, or is it something that's very rigid and so on? So for myself, years ago, I had experience. I had read a number of things and so on, and kind of led me into my meditative experience. And then I had this mystical experience, much like Ed Joseph has talked about. And I realized that I needed a way to be able to think about it for my own benefit. But every time I tried to communicate it to somebody else and hope that maybe they would help me to understand it, it kind of like, it was this long and winding road that didn't go anywhere. I didn't have the right words. I didn't have the right system to be able to bring it together, to make it make any sense to myself or to anybody else. So I kind of wandered for quite a while trying to find something. And then finally, when I found the Buddha Dharma, then I realized there was something, there was a system that really spoke to not just the experience I had and what that was, what the different aspects of the experience was, but also the direction of where that leads us. Where does that experience go? What's the next step after that? So that's one reason why I became a Buddhist. Before that, I grew up with a Jewish father, a Catholic mother, and I read a lot about New Agey stuff, and I studied and practiced astrology and numerology and things like that, and so on. And it was all useful, but none of it, really answered what I was trying to do, or all came together in the way that the Buddha Dharma did. So I'm very grateful for that. That it really, really helped me and so on. And so now it gives a frame by which we can have a discussion with ourselves to analyze who we are, what we're going through, but also to be able to have an intellectual discussion that we're having right now with each other. And what that intellectual discussion is surrounding itself with, or aimed at, or is part of, is this mystical stuff, this spiritual stuff, whatever you want to call it, is very nebulous and very abstract and so on. So we find that this has to come together at some point. We've got to be able to see how this works, So it's kind of like, the question of the three teachings of the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidharma. First is there's got to be some kind of a discipline. Then there's got to be some kind of a compassion for ourselves to realize, oh, I need some way to be able to communicate this. I need some way to be able to understand this. And then there needs to be a wisdom that comes out of this, a result that I can in some way categorize, and I can begin to think about it and begin to communicate that and everything, see a result that I can talk about, that I can think about, and so on. So we can see how that works and so on. So the next step in this conversation, I think, for us then to have is what we call, in Buddhism, we call the paramitas. Paramitas is a Sanskrit word that means perfection. So as we begin our journey, whatever journey that is, we begin by being on this ground. This ground is our starting spot, and once we recognize that there's a destination that we want to get to, there's a destination out there that we want to get to, there has to be some kind of a pathway to be able to get there. And it may be a straight pathway, it may be a circuitous pathway, whatever, but we realize that there's some kind of a pathway. And in Buddhism, we call it the ground, we call it the path, and then we call it the fruition, that we have traversed this path and we've gotten to this result. We've gotten to this realization. And what we find, there's no big secret here, but what we find is we had that fruition in front of us at the ground level. But the problem was we didn't recognize it because we didn't have the vocabulary. We didn't have the experience of having discovered this for ourselves. It wasn't very clear to us. We didn't see the system. We didn't see how it was working and so on. By going through the pathway, by following that pathway, we kind of meander. We kind of go back and forth. We begin to take liberties and so on. And by bringing ourselves back onto the pathway, we're defining what that system is. And then when we get to the end of the pathway, we get to the result, to the fruition, we say, oh, I was there the whole time. I just didn't recognize it. So along this pathway, then, we develop these perfections. We cultivate these perfections. what we're doing is we're purifying the imperfections. We're saying, oh, this doesn't work. I don't need to deal with that anymore. I don't need to think of it in that way, or I need to recognize that on the path, I can analyze it and see it and distill it, and the misconceptions just fall away. The misconceptions may be natural from my state of mind, being confused as it was, but as I go through the pathway and go through the perfections, I begin to see how they come together and how they kind of neutralize and become perfect wisdom, perfect knowledge, perfect experience, however you wish to say it. So these 6 perfections are identified here in this next part of the outline, and it's the 6 perfections are, the 6 paramitas are, number 1 is generosity. Number 2 is moral ethics. Number 3 is patience. Number 4 is perseverance. Number 5 is meditative concentration. And number 6 is wisdom awareness. So these are the cause to cross samsara into nirvana. So if we start out that we're in this samsara, we're in this confused state, this suffering state, but in this suffering state is nirvana. Once we are able to overcome our suffering being in samsara, we're in the same place. We're still breathing, we're still living. But the difference is we don't have the afflictions. We don't have the desire, like Ed Joseph was speaking about. We don't have the desire. We don't have the aversions. And we don't have the delusion or the ignorance of knowing where we are. We purified that. And we realized that it was there the whole time. It's just a matter of being able to have a clarity to be able to recognize these things. So let's go backwards now in terms of asking everybody to comment. So Ed Joseph, with this in mind, with these 6 paramitas, would you mind commenting on that? Is there something that, did you think of anything while we were discussing that?
I think indirectly, I was practicing in the Bible, for example. It says, seeks the perfection of the Father, just as the Christ, referring to Jesus the Christ. Seek the perfection of the Father as Jesus the Son sought to be with the Father, right? So the knowledge I had, and I'm like, then how do you do that? I didn't really know, right? I didn't really know how to do that, but indirectly through ethics, through philosophy, of ethics, morality, and that's how I started, right? And I would use logic, I would use truth, that type of thing. And that's why I said, for the very thing that I was seeking, it was already in me. I was just simply ignorant of it, that thinking that looking outside of me that I'm gonna find it. Then to discover that all this time, this thing was in me. However, I needed to overcome the very desire to be what I wanted to be, what I was seeking for. Does that make sense? The very desire to try to understand, because the desire that I had was like, I was looking, I'm like, there gotta be more than just this, right? And what is just this? It's just living and, go to church, read the Bible, something that I didn't even understand, right? I know it didn't make sense to me. I said, you know what? if it's logically, it's not making sense, then there has to be something more. And yet people around, around me, PhD, degree in ministry, doctorate degree in ministry, they could not answer my question. They said, just believe. Well, to me, that was not enough. I said, thank you, but no, thank you. It's not enough because I want to understand, right? So, and it's through the action, is to the being, the doing, the living. And where I made a conscious decision to say, you know what, even though I love to eat, I'm gonna set aside one day I don't eat, for example. And I begin to do certain things like watching try to absorb nature, sitting next to a tree. For somebody who's like an engineer, that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what I felt that I needed to do. Then I begin to do it. People like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me, but except that I want to experience something that I'm ignorant of right now.
Ed, I think you froze up. Give me a
The
second here.
morality,
Oh, you froze up there, Ed. Whatever that last sentence or two is, if you can repeat that, please.
okay, yes. And I said from the 6 points of the parameters, that those are the things that I was doing it, but I was not really aware of it. Okay. So, however, now I am aware. I am aware that yes, desires are still there. But once I become aware of the desire, then I said, okay, you know what? Then I take a step back. I literally take a step back, just recline a little bit, and then just breathe a little differently. I create an awareness within me so that I let that desire, because it's an emotion, it's a feeling. So I become one with that feeling. I become aware of it. I said, you know what? In 5 minutes, in 10 minutes. Okay. And I do that again and again and again and again. So at least that's to me, at least that's the blueprint, right? Using those three, using the desire, the ignorance, the aversion, because when you are aversive to something, the more you think about it, the more that it manifests within you. The same thing for desire, the same thing for ignorance, right? If you're ignorant of something, if you don't know about it, then you don't know about it. But at the same time, if you have a seeking, if you have a quest to understand something, then it's to diffuse yourself, right? Then is to diffuse yourself from the not knowing to have an openness and said, I want to understand this. Not only do I want to understand it, but I want to experience it. Because once you experience something, then it's just a different level. And that is, I think, the 6th point that you had touched upon, Lance, which is the wisdom awareness. Once you have experience you go from unconscious ignorance to conscious ignorance, and to experience, to be conscious in knowing, which is Gnostic, and then now to actually have the experience is above the knowledge. And then now, once you go to those phases, and then now you can say, where I have this wisdom, then when it is called upon with certain awareness, then you can apply this wisdom. So basically, that's what I got the parameters that you touch upon, and I think that's the 6 points that I'm developing. I'm refining. I think until I take my last breath, and then that's the processes.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ed Jones?
Well, Ed and the group in general, I think, is much further along the path here than I am. And I'm very interested in what they have to say, but I don't quite connect with all of it yet. In terms of organizing what we're talking about, we've used not all tonight, but in a number of terms, categories, taxonomy, system, framework, pathway. Ed's used the term blueprint. All efforts to kind of organize our thinking and our learning, I think. From a personal standpoint, I could relate to some of those terms so much better than others. I don't, with the 6 paramitas, I see these as aspirations, which are worthy aspirations. And the more progress I make in aspiring to these perfections, the better person I am. But I don't see a system. Now, maybe I'm just overreact. Maybe I'm just trying to make too much of the terminology here, but there's a interrelationship being referred to that I'm not getting.
Just let me interject. The system is, we talk about calm abiding. We talk about resting. When we rest, our breath gets under control. We try and just rest our thoughts, focus on one thing. We bring it back to that one thing. Maybe it's our breath, maybe it's a picture or a particular thought or something like that. And then we're trying to develop what we call one-pointed mindfulness. To whatever degree we're successful at that. And in the beginning, it doesn't last very long, that one-pointed mindfulness, but nevertheless, we can hold it for maybe a few seconds, even those of us who've been doing this for years, may only have a few seconds, to be able to do these things, to bring one-pointed mindfulness. But in that period, which can sometimes seem like an eternity, there can be something that comes up, a thought that comes up that seems to be a revolutionary kind of a thought. It really spins around, and all of a sudden now you have something new to think about that you haven't thought about. A new idea comes up. Maybe it could be expressed as a wisdom, a new way of looking at an old problem, but a new way. And we call that insight meditation. So there's calm abiding in meditation. And then there's insight meditation that comes out of the calm abiding very naturally. But it only happens in a way that when you can focus, when you can quiet all the other stuff around you and so on. And then with that insight, now you need to have a way to be able to analyze that. You got to have a system to be able to analyze that. And that's what we're talking about, is this system, to see that there is this system that gets us to the calm abiding. Then there is this system to be able to analyze that which results from the calm abiding. And then after that, then there's a system by which we then employ that to actualize in our lives. It becomes the result of our lives. So with that general description, that's how I think, we're trying to express, I'm trying to express, what this system is. So you could say maybe it's 3 systems or something like that. But we see that we are systematic people. And maybe it's just a matter of being able to recognize that. And I'm sure you do. And I'm sure we can put it in terms that you would agree to. But nevertheless, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So having said that, do you have any comment after that?
I'm certainly aware of, something you've emphasized and Ed emphasized, that often we find things that were there in plain sight all the time. We just didn't have the tools or the wherewithal to recognize them. And I've certainly found that to be true. And I've found it to be true in these discussions here that I've been involved in the last year. So I don't trivialize any of this, but at the same time, I'm struggling with it.
Okay. Gary?
Yeah, I think that as I look at these, the 6 paramitas, there's of course, a strong connection in all of them. They're like a flow of energy to me. And you need the same energy in each element of the 6 paramitas, I think, or something similar, a comparable energy to keep yourself on the path that you want to pursue. If I were to pick for myself personally, the paramita that I feel most drawn to in terms of my personal needs, it's both patience and perseverance. Meditative concentration is a given. If you can only have one pointed mindfulness for a few seconds, for me, it's a split second. And because of the time where I began to pursue the middle way. But I think that, to me, it is a matter of not being indifferent to the world that swarms around us with all of its chaos and temptation that would invite us to look away from the path and to look away from our meditation and our pursuit of emptiness. It's patience. And that involves not letting the world be too much with us, to use a phrase that is very familiar to most people. And in one sense, it's not complicated, but in another sense, in today's world, with so many things challenging our attention and tempting us to be other than what the 6 paramitas invite us to be, it requires concentrated pursuit. We have to constantly be bringing ourselves back to center because there's always something pulling us away.
Okay. Thank you. Thomas?
The six perfections, the six paramitas. It's said that the first five is needed to become aware of wisdom. But you certainly need some wisdom to realize, to start the paramitas. And I was always told as a young man, practice the very first one the most, generosity. Giving your time, your effort, money, whatever it takes. Why? Because that really creates the mindfulness of selflessness of self. And that's what Buddhism's about. It's not about me or I. It's about others. About being generous with your time, your knowledge, your wealth, whatever you may have. There's a lot less concentration on just me. And when you have less concentration on me, there's less suffering of me. There's less suffering of people around me. You know, and it's difficult to practice these things, you know, on a daily basis, you know, always trying to be morally ethic, you know, have moral ethics, you know, and patience and such, and joyful effort and meditation. But everything around us helps us do that. Everything around us helps us do that. The people that, you know, that give us the hardest time, that really, those are our best teachers, you know. Those are the ones that we should really be thankful for and really be praising, because those are ones that help us, you know, practice our moral ethics, you know, by keeping a wholesome mindfulness towards them, and having patience, and having, you know, having create better patience for us, and yeah, all these things that, you know, like that you're talking about, Gary, and Ed Joseph, and Mr. Jones, you know, these are all important things, you know, that there is a system there that, you know, we have to follow. And it's easier to get sidetracked and say, oh, well, you know, I don't think that's that important, or, you know, that's it's easy to fall off off those paths, you know, just those six simple things, really simple things, you know. And well, like I said, I mean, that's the difference, you know, between, because I was raised with Buddhism, and these things were always drilled into your head, you know, just constantly drilled into your head, you know. When my mother, you know, is, you know, just don't just say it, but, you know, live it every day. And there was, you know, a requirement for us as a child to learn these things, memorize these things, not just memorize it, but do it every day. You know, always be as generous as possible to everyone, you know, and, you know, to lead by with good moral ethics and patience. Oh, my parents used to help me practice that all the time. And, you know, and then joyful effort. That was probably the hardest thing, joyful effort, you know, because, you know, I could tend to be lazy and you know, and try to get sidetracked and do other things, and you know, but the other things came rather easily. You know, the only thing I can probably think of is my past karmic connections with those things. You know, and earlier when we were talking about the Abhidharma, you know, I think Mr. Jones just said something about the emphasis on interdependence, origination. There's a mantra to that. All phenomenon arise from causes. All phenomenon arise from causes. And nothing happens because it just happens. And that's a teaching that Lance has given us many times. That's the mantras that we have to recite for doing the non-drill practice. You know, we recite that over and over and over and over. You know, it's a wonderful teaching. You know, that really everything is interdependent. Like these 6 perfections, they all intertwine with each other. And when we understand, you know, perfect the first 5, that 6th one, that wisdom, that will shine. You know, and this is it's going to take me a long time, but I'm working at it, bit by bit, day by day. Yeah, trying to help as many people as I can. So on that note, Mr. Michael.
I just keep in mind that these 6 paramitas are very important in Mahayana Buddhism, but they've evolved in pretty much the same state from a set of 10 or more in Theravada Buddhism. And you know, under the umbrella of training and action bodhicitta, I think what they really describe, they're meant to describe characteristics of behavior and of intellect that are exhibited by enlightened beings. So these are examples of stops on the bodhisattva path, steps on the bodhisattva path. And I mean, I think they stack nicely from generosity to wisdom awareness. And once you hit the perfection, or the same as completeness, the completeness of wisdom awareness, then you're talking about the prajna paramitas. And there's a series of sutras that sort of expound on the prajna paramitas, the Diamond Sutra being one of them. There's some in the Lotus Sutra as well. But I mean, I feel like this just falls nicely under the training in action bodhicitta. So these are definitely, I think Ed was saying, these are aspirations. These are characteristics that we all, if we're here tonight, we have these to a certain extent. And if we don't think we have them, then at least we admire them and we understand them to be good and appropriate in this current context and in greater generality. So we're more enlightened than we think, because we understand all of these. And to a certain extent, we have these qualities of character and of intellect. And the more we look at this list among lists, the more we see the interconnectedness of all of these taxonomies, and Ed, I'm very impressed with bringing up interdependent arising. That's pretty slick.
Oh.
So I think Ed gets it. So, and yeah, Ed gets it.
No, he doesn't. Well, he doesn't think he does anyway.
So yeah, these are, for me, they're steps on the path, characteristics that, ideas, what clothes we want to wear,
Okay, thank you. So I think training in the paramitas, training in action bodhicitta has three elements to it, three modes to it. If you look at the next page in our outline book, page 26, you can see that these three mind trainings, we have to train our mind. So when we're talking about training our mind, we're training our intellectual mind to be able to directly communicate with our big mind, our heart mind. Our brain mind and our heart mind are connected. However, sometimes there's a buffer that is blocking or that is interfering or it is not being traversed because of misconceptions or delusions or jealousies, the emotions. The emotions are up in the brain here, and they block the heart. We say that someone wears their emotions on their sleeve. They wear their emotions like, from their heart. They're so emotional from their heart, but it's that the heart's not able to come through because the heart is the truth. And what's coming through, what we're seeing, what we're calling the emotions, is our intellectualization of our confusions that manifest in our foibles and our peccadillos and our personalities and our neuroses and so on like that. So these three mind trainings, to recognize these three mind trainings becomes a part of the system to be able to look at it now in a microcosm, in a macrocosm kind of a way. Say, okay, what is this system? The system first are these three mind trainings. And we're training the mind, the intellectual mind, and the heart mind to connect with each other. So there's training in superior morality is the first of the three mind trainings, superior morality. Because if we don't have that morality, if we don't have that discipline, then at some point, everything's going to break apart. Like building a sand castle, how they say building a castle out of sand or something like that. If you don't build it on granite, if you don't build it on bedrock, then things are going to eventually fall apart. So we have to have a sense of morality. We have to have a sense of discipline. So this discipline is made up of generosity, is made up of the moral ethics, the morality that we have between, virtue, non-virtue, and so on. And we've talked about these things. And then patience, to have the morality of patience, to have the mind training of patience, to have compassion for ourselves, the patience for ourselves. We may not get things right away. Other people may not get things right away, but we have to have patience to work through it. And then we have to have the perseverance to keep up that inertia, to keep doing it, so that we, our patience is in our perseverance. So those four are what we call the training the mind in morality, superior morality. Then the next one is training in superior thought. So training in superior thought means this meditative concentration, but the meditative concentration grows out of contemplation. You just can't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to meditate, and bam, everything clears away out of your mind. And now you're going to have these transcendent, glorious thoughts and so on. All these mysterious things are going to start happening. And it's not practical. It doesn't work that way. We have to go through a process, and the process begins with a contemplation. So I've already, said that we need to be able to clear our mind through calm abiding meditation, and there's a process for that. And then out of that, then comes these insights, and we need to contemplate those insights, and then comes comes working out the wisdom and so on. Then comes the meditation out of having that contemplation. So we can't force the meditation to come. It comes of its own accord when we have rested the intellectual investigation of the intellectual mind. So this is all part of training in superior thought. And then the third training of the mind is in superior wisdom awareness. Not the wisdom itself, but the awareness of the superior wisdom. That these things come to us in many different ways that we may not expect. And we can't anticipate them. We shouldn't have expectation for them. We need to just let it rest, and that meditation wisdom comes up on its own. So we need to be aware that that's what's happening. And then when it does happen, to be able to say, oh, there's a novel way of me thinking about something. There's a novel way of me being able to approach this particular situation, these causes and conditions that are resulting in my actions that are causing me suffering or causing other beings suffering. And when we're trying to neutralize that suffering, it means by re-examining those causes and conditions and not having the same result from our interaction with those causes and conditions. So in other words, we have to change. So we need to know what it is that we're going to change. This is wisdom awareness. So these three things, these three trainings of the mind are very, very, very important. And it's the perfection of these that leads us along the path to get to our destination, that fruition of, we're saying now, enlightenment or Buddhahood, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it Christ? We can call it Christ. It's the same thing. You want to call it God? Same thing. You want to call it Yahweh? Same thing. I mean, any other tradition talks about the same thing and has their approach to doing it and so on. And if you get into the science of each of those systems, some system like this is going to be revealed. There's going to be some elements of this there. So Tom pointed out that there's these 6 elements, these 6 paramitas, and it's like you got to have the first 5 to get to the 6th one, which is the wisdom awareness. There's also another way of looking at this. And if we look at these 5, wisdom, morality, patience, perseverance, meditative concentration, and wisdom awareness, if you look at those 6 and you say, okay, I'm going to take the generosity, I'm going to take the morality, I'm going to take the patience, I'm going to take the meditative concentration, and I'm going to take the wisdom awareness, and I'm going to put them on a string as if those are 5 jewels. I'm going to thread those 5 jewels with the thread of perseverance. We are going to persevere to be generous. We're going to persevere to be morally correct. We're going to persevere to be patient. We're going to persevere to cultivate meditative concentration. We're going to persevere to become wisdom aware or aware of wisdom. So that's another way of looking at these 6 elements and putting them together in on a string like that, like a bracelet. So there's more to this, and I think we need to talk more about it. We'll continue this conversation next week because this is very important. These 6 paramitas are very, very important to be able to be on the path and recognize what that path is. So does anybody have any comments that you'd like to make? We have a few minutes left. And if you can keep your comments relatively short, a couple, 3 minutes or something like that would be great. And then everybody can express themselves where you are in our discussion for tonight. So let me start with Gary. Would you please start?
Well, for me, the core of the 6 paramitas is a type of peace that enables you to have meditative concentration and patience and superior thinking that acts, filters, not a word I like, but it applies that leaves the storm of the world outside of you and allows you to find the truth inside yourself, what really matters. And what really matters is what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself, to me, is often what you will think of others. And if you have found that type of peace, that type of awareness and patience with yourself, then you will have it with all. And the conflict in our lives, or certainly in mine, sometimes involves not so much my impatience or my aversion to what has happened in the world or to what others have done, is my aversion to my reaction to it and my inclination to assign to it an importance that should not be there. Peace and awareness that I am seeking lies within. And the disruption of that peace is not tied to the disruption in the world. It's tied to the disruption within me.
Very good. Thank you. And Joseph, would you make a closing comment, please?
Sure, of course. It is my understanding that the 6 pillars of the parameters are the glue to life action, to behaving. In that generosity. To be generous, you first have to possess whatever that you're gonna share. And whatever that you're sharing, that's action. And morality is that of practicing, is that of being. Being is action. Otherwise, if a dead man could do it, or a dead person could do it, then it's not action, it's not being, it's not behaving. And that patience, and that's why I provide for the patience and perseverance that go hand in hand. That's why I provide for the cultivation of the first two values, if you will, or process, because those are processes. And the meditation is the mindfulness of being aware, of cultivating first the awareness within you. Because absent of any of those things, if you don't have, again, if you don't have, you cannot give. Yes, while it's good to be selfless, but if somebody is devoid of an element, where there's patience, where there is the perseverance to attain the eventual wisdom of awareness through meditation, you're not gonna get there. So the person first, as the practitioner, as a therapist, as the observer, as the participator, the experiencer, you first have to have those. If you don't have those, how can you give? So Dharma had to first embody suffering. He didn't have to. That's a choice that he made, because everything was available to him. And yet, he made a conscious decision. He made a choice to understand how those people around him, that how he could have so much, and yet so many people are suffering. So by having gained the experiential wisdom of awareness, not just insight, but awareness, come from being, and that he was able to cultivate what we are discussing this very evening, which is, once we embodied those 6 pillars, those 6 processes, then from there we're better able to see desire and approach it and deal with it head on. We're able to see something that a person who might be aversive towards us and say, you know what? We're not gonna deal with this person for the rest of our lives, and therefore pity that person. And once we're able to embody those 6 processes from the parameters, then we're able to absolve ourselves out of ignorance, because we develop the wisdom of awareness from the other 5 pillars.
Okay, very good. We got to wind things up. Thank you very much. And the person you were talking about, I think, was Gautama, correct? Buddha.
Gautama. Yeah,
I
sure.
just want to be clear that everybody recognize that.
Sure.
Tom, would you comment? And then Michael, and then Ed Jones, if you'll be the follow-up, the cleanup hitter tonight. So Tom, please.
Wonderful discussion tonight on the paramitas, and also on bodhicitta aspiration, or the action bodhicitta. And bodhicitta has been explained to us many times. That is the excellent, precious mind. And ultimately, Buddhism is about awakening and helping all others awaken. And these paramitas, the 6 paramitas, are a guide to helping us perfect ourselves. And we are already perfected. It's because of our obscurations and all of our impurities that we are what we are. But the core nature is there. You know, you have that wonderful 100-carat diamond in your pocket. You just don't realize it. You know, and it's covered, you know, with dirt and mud and everything else. But once you start polishing that, and that's our practice, once we start polishing that it will shine. You know, it's not something that's, you know, like Joseph says, it's not something that's external. It's all within us. All that's within us. You know, and as we aspire to keep on the path, you know, one day it will come to fruition. And you know, and that day isn't far. Just keep at it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michael.
Sure. This is something from Jigme Lingpa on the 6 paramitas. He says, transcendent generosity is found in contentment. Its essence is simply letting go. Discipline is not to displease the 3 jewels. The best patience is unfailing mindfulness and awareness. Diligence is needed to sustain all the other perfections. Concentration is to experience as deities all the appearances to which one clings. Wisdom is the self-liberation of grasping and clinging. In it, there is neither thinker nor thinking. It is not ordinary. It is free from fixed convictions. It is beyond suffering. It is supreme peace. So these are their virtues that these are the virtues that have to be constantly cultivated, constantly perfected. We just don't put them in our pocket. So they're dynamic and they interact. And we have nuggets of each of them, I think, or we wouldn't be here.
Very good. Thank you. Ed?
I don't really have any concluding comments. I've got a lot of thinking to do. At some point, I'd like to pursue a seed that Gary planted for me in his comments. I'm not sure he actually said this. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I'm doing this all the time. Last week I quoted Rebecca as having said something that wasn't what she meant, but it still planted a seed for me. In my efforts to be patient and to be generous, can be in particular, and probably all of these paramitas can be interfered with if I'm too impressed with my own reactions. I mean, to what other people say. I mean, if I have a instinct that somebody says is wrong, or and I give license to that reaction, that interferes with my ability to be patient, or my ability to have generosity of thought, or to have, or with all of these things. So anyway, Gary, I don't know if you said that or not, but I do think my own reactions interfere, dwelling too much or being too impressed by my own reactions interferes with my effort to develop these virtues.
Well, very good. Thank you. I think it was very good. Everybody had great comments, and I would ask, we're going to continue this conversation next week and maybe the week after that, because this is a profound topic and we want to be able to really fathom it out. And I think if you can take a few minutes sometime this week, maybe a little bit every day, maybe one day, whatever, but if you can develop a thought process and you look at the notes that we have here, you look at this outline, or you look at the book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the chapters that this is drawn from, and contemplate whatever you want as you go through, one thing at a time, and apply these three things: what, why, and how. So whatever those three things mean to you for any one of these topics, what is it, why is it, and how does it manifest itself in my life? So that'll help us to prepare for next week, because we're going to be talking about these very same ideas, but maybe expounding on them a little bit more. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you very much. I think it was great. So I look forward to seeing everybody again next week. So we'll do our dedication prayer. So I'm going to turn to page 21 and 22. This is the dedication prayer by Lord Jigden Sumgun. And just to remind everyone, Lord Jigden Sumgun was the founder of our lineage, the Drikung Kagyu lineage, over 800 years ago. So we recite this prayer. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mothers sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings from my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Hom. Om, Hom. Om, Hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nancy, thank you so much. This is beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.